Sauron chose vulnerability over control. That contradicts everything we know about who he is. The Rings of Power gave us a version of Sauron who hides as Halbrand, manipulates Galadriel, and ultimately reveals himself in the season finale. But there's a problem embedded in that arc. The show built emotional connection between deceiver and deceived. It made him care. And that's where the character logic starts to break. Spoilers ahead. To understand why this choice created a narrative error, you need to understand what Sauron actually wants. Not power for its own sake. Order. Perfect, unchanging order imposed through domination. He fears chaos because chaos means loss of control. He fears powerlessness because powerlessness means vulnerability. And he fears abandonment because Morgoth, his original master, is gone. Those three fears shape every decision he makes. But there's something deeper. Sauron is a Maya, an immortal spirit who chose corruption. He didn't fall accidentally. He chose Morgoth. He chose domination. And that choice reveals something critical about his psychology. He believes in hierarchical order as the natural state of existence. Someone rules. Someone serves. That's not cruelty to him. That's cosmic correctness. The problem is that he can't create. He can only corrupt what already exists. He can't build new life, new beauty, new possibility. He can only take what others made and reshape it to serve his vision. That's why the rings matter psychologically. They're not just weapons. They're proof that he can impose his order on creation itself. They're the closest he'll ever come to being a creator. But he needs others to make them. He needs Celebrimber's craft. He needs elven knowledge. He needs Galadriel's passion for healing Middle-earth to justify the project. That dependency is humiliating for someone whose entire psychology is built on control. And it's why his manipulation of Galadriel is so critical to who he is. Deception isn't just a tactic for Sauron. It's survival. If he can't dominate through force immediately, he'll dominate through influence. He'll infiltrate, manipulate, and guide events toward his version of order. That's psychologically consistent. What's not consistent is letting the target of that manipulation matter to him emotionally. Because emotional attachment creates exactly what he fears most: dependence on someone else's choices. The Halbrand persona works as survival. Sauron is weak, scattered, clinging to wreckage in the ocean. He has no army, no stronghold, no rings. He needs cover. So he becomes a human king with a tragic past. That's tactically sound. It gives him mobility, access to Numenor's resources, and proximity to elves who can teach him what he doesn't know about ringcraft. But the mask goes deeper than tactics. Halbrand isn't just a disguise. He's a psychological experiment. Sauron tests whether humility can be weaponized. He plays a reluctant leader, the man who doesn't want a throne, the one who needs to be convinced. That's brilliant manipulation because it makes others invest in his rise. They push him toward power, which means they own the outcome emotionally. When he takes the crown, it feels like their victory, not his ambition. That's the kind of deception that matches his psychology. Control through misdirection. Influence through manufactured humility. He's not just lying. He's reconstructing how people perceive choice itself. And here's what makes that terrifying. Sauron doesn't understand free the way mortals do. He's immortal. Consequences don't have the same weight when you have eternity to recover from mistakes. He sees mortal choices as fundamentally irrational because they're driven by time pressure, fear of death, emotional urgency. He thinks he can predict behavior because he thinks behavior follows logical patterns. Give someone what they want and they'll serve you. Threaten what they love and they'll submit. That's his model of psychology. But Galadriel breaks that model. She wants to heal Middle-earth. She wants to stop darkness. Those are goals he can work with. He becomes the ally she needs. He offers partnership, shared purpose, mutual respect. And tactically, that should be enough. She should serve his goals without realizing it. But the show suggests something else happens. He starts to believe the role. He starts to want the partnership to be real. And that's where the character logic fractures. Because if Sauron's core fear is vulnerability, emotional attachment is the thing he would avoid most. Caring about Galadriel means giving her leverage over him. It means his decisions are no longer purely about control. They're about winning her approval, keeping her close, managing her perception of him. That's not domination. That's dependence. And dependence is exactly what his psychology is designed to prevent. You could argue he's manipulating himself. that he's so deep in the Halbrand role, he starts believing it. But that contradicts his established nature too. Sauron is a spirit of order who chose corruption with full awareness. He's not the kind of being who loses himself in performance. He's the one who shapes performances to serve his goals. The moment a performance starts controlling him, he's compromised. And a compromised Sauron is a different character entirely. Here's where the show chose drama over logic. Romance increases emotional stakes. It makes the betrayal hurt more. It gives Galadriel a personal wound, not just a tactical defeat. That's effective storytelling for audience engagement. But it requires Sauron to act against his core psychology. It requires him to care when caring makes him weak. And weakness is the one thing his entire existence is built to avoid. The reveal timing exposes this problem further. Sauron reveals himself at the end of the season because that's when the narrative needs the twist. But if you follow his psychology, he would reveal himself when he achieves maximum leverage, not when the script demands it. He has Galadriel's trust. He has access to Celebrimbor. He's learning ringcraft. The forge is ready. Why expose yourself before the rings are made? Why risk everything for a dramatic confrontation? The character-consistent answer is, you don't. You wait. You finish the manipulation. You secure the rings, the alliances, the knowledge you need. Then, when you're untouchable, you reveal the truth, not as a confession, as a demonstration of power, not to hurt her, to show her that her choices never mattered, that she was always serving his design. That's the cruelty that matches his psychology, not passionate betrayal, cold inevitability. But the show needed the season finale twist. So Sauron acts when the plot needs him to, not when the psychology would demand it. And that reveals the fundamental tension. The story wants an emotional villain, someone we can understand, maybe even sympathize with. But Sauron's actual psychology doesn't create that character. It creates someone who can't conceive of sacrifice, can't process selflessness, and fundamentally misunderstands why Galadriel would choose principle over power. When she rejects him, he looks hurt, not tactically surprised, emotionally hurt. And that's the narrative error crystallized in one moment. Because Sauron shouldn't be capable of that kind of hurt. He should be confused, maybe frustrated that his model of her psychology was wrong. But hurt requires caring, and caring requires vulnerability. And vulnerability is what he spent millennia architecting himself to never feel again. Let's map the logically consistent alternate path. 3 steps, grounded in his established character and the deeper psychology of what he actually is. Step 1. Sauron manipulates Galadriel without emotional investment. He studies her the way an immortal studies patterns. He learns what she needs to hear. He becomes the ally she's been searching for. But it's pure calculation. No genuine conflict. No hesitation. No hurt when she pulls away. He's observing a mortal doing what mortals do, acting on emotion instead of logic. He finds it predictable, almost boring. That matches his fear structure and his fundamental nature. Vulnerability is the enemy. Emotional distance is survival. And immortals don't form attachments to mayflies. Step 2. He reveals himself only after securing the forge and the knowledge he needs. Not in a moment of dramatic confrontation, but when he's already won. Maybe he doesn't reveal himself at all in season 1. Maybe Galadriel discovers the truth later, after the rings are made, after he's vanished, after she realizes every choice she made served his design. That would be psychologically consistent. Sauron doesn't need her to know he deceived her. He needs her to have served his purpose. The reveal is irrelevant to his goals. It's theatrical, and he's not theatrical. He's methodical. Step 3. When Galadriel learns the truth, her response is about recognizing tactical deception, not processing heartbreak. She's been used. She's been played. But it's not personal. It's strategic. She was a resource, and he exploited her with the same cold efficiency he'd exploit any resource. That's the betrayal. Not love, not partnership. Cold, calculated manipulation by a being who genuinely cannot comprehend why she'd choose suffering over order. Why she'd reject his offer when his offer is objectively logical. That version of the story keeps Sauron psychologically intact. He's the character his fears and his nature would create. Untouchable, isolated, fundamentally unable to connect, and convinced that strength rather than limitation. He doesn't learn. He doesn't grow. He doesn't change. Because he's immortal, and immortals who've chosen their path don't have character arcs the way mortals do. They have patterns, and patterns repeat. So why did the show choose the other path? Because vulnerability humanizes the villain. It makes him relatable. Audiences connect with characters who struggle, who want things they can't have, who feel torn between what they want and what they need. A Sauron who never cares is harder to invest in. He's a force, not a person. The show wanted a person. And to get that, they had to compromise his fundamental nature. That's not necessarily bad storytelling. It's a trade-off. You gain emotional complexity. You lose logical consistency. You gain audience investment. You lose the horror of what Sauron actually represents, of being so committed to control that he's hollowed out everything that makes consciousness meaningful. The question is whether the character can survive that trade-off, or whether you created someone fundamentally different from who he was supposed to be. Here's the long-term problem. Sauron now carries emotional baggage. The Galadriel connection doesn't just disappear. If he genuinely cared, that changes him. It means he's capable of connection, which means he's capable of growth, which means he's not the unchanging force of order he believes himself to be. If he didn't genuinely care, then the show lied to the audience about what we were watching. Either way, future seasons have to deal with the consequences. Does he try to win her back? Does he harden into pure cruelty as a reaction to rejection? Does he pretend it never mattered while his actions reveal otherwise? Does he become obsessed with proving she was wrong to refuse him? Each of those paths creates a different character, and none of them align perfectly with the Sauron we started with. The one who fears vulnerability, who needs control, who manipulates without attachment because attachment is weakness and weakness is death. The narrative error isn't just about one season. It's about what happens when you change a character's core psychology to serve a single emotional beat. When you make an immortal care about immortal. When you make a being of pure order experience chaos. When you make someone who spent thousands of years avoiding vulnerability choose it voluntarily. If you make a deceiver fall in love, you've created a different character. That's not a judgment. It's a structural observation. The character who manipulates without caring and the character who manipulates while caring are psychologically distinct. They make different choices. They fear different things. They end up in different places. One is tragic. The other is terrifying. The show chose tragic. And that choice means the Sauron we follow from here is not the Sauron his original nature would have created. He's someone else now. Someone shaped by emotional compromise, not just tactical necessity. Someone who learned that vulnerability exists and chose it anyway. That might make for compelling drama. It might create fascinating tension in future seasons. But it's a narrative error in terms of character consistency, because the foundation doesn't support the structure you build on top of it. If you change the choice, you change the person. And once you've changed the person, the story can't go back to pretending they were always this way. Sauron can't be both immortal who's incapable of genuine connection and a lover who got his heart broken. Those are different characters wearing the same name. The Rings of Power chose one. And every choice that comes after has to count for that first compromise. That's not failure. That's just consequence. The consequence of choosing drama over the disturbing logic of what a character like Sauron actually is. Of being so afraid of chaos that he killed everything chaotic in himself, including capacity to care. And when you bring that capacity back, you haven't redeemed him. You've just made him someone else.